Okay, so we finished chapters 6 through 9, and we have finally gotten to, we got to Oz, we met the Wizard of Oz, and we talked about this, how our mission is now to find the Wicked Witch of the West. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to read today chapters 10 through 12, and chapter 10 is called The Search for the Wicked Witch, and you are going to be very surprised at what happens when they encounter her. They are going to run into her, and she's pretty sneaky and pretty devious. Now, one thing that I didn't realize until I read this, because I don't remember this from the movie at all, and I have not read the book before, I've only watched the movie. So one thing that I want you to think about is when they meet her, it says, while Dorothy and the Lion were sleeping, the Wicked Witch of the West was watching them. She had only one eye. But it was as powerful as a telescope, and she could see everything. So that's definitely something that was not quite part of the movie. The funny thing is that in the book, if you are looking at the pictures as I'm reading, all the pictures have her with two eyes. But anyhow, so, all right, so anyhow, in chapter 10, they're all going to encounter her. She is going to, bad things are going to happen to Dorothy and her friends when they encounter the Wicked Witch of the West. When we get to chapter 11, though, things are going to look up a little bit. It is, again, the title is The Rescue. So maybe you could be making a prediction about, what that means and who's getting rescued and how do you, wow. So a couple things. Rescued by whom? And then chapter 12 is going to be, chapter 12, hold on here, is going to be the winged monkeys. And if you remember the movie, they were really scary in the movie. And they definitely were like big helpers of the Wicked Witch of the West. So Dorothy is going to have now multiple encounters with these winged monkeys throughout the rest of the book. So, again, you could kind of be thinking about, well, how do we think the winged monkeys are going to help? Are they going to help her, or are they going to be, are they going to be allies or adversaries to Dorothy? Are they going to cause her problems or help her? So those are a couple things I would like you to think about as I'm reading through chapters 10 through 12. All right. Chapter 10, The Search for the Wicked Witch. Dorothy and her friends were led to the gates of the Emerald City. The guardian of the gate removed their green glasses and put them back in the green box. He wished them good luck and reminded Dorothy that the Wicked Witch was very mean and would try to make them her slaves. After they had said goodbye to the guardian of the gate, they began to walk towards the west. Soon the hot sun made Dorothy and the Lion very tired. They lay down in the cool grass and fell asleep, while the Tin Man and the Scarecrow kept watch. While Dorothy and the Lion were sleeping, the Wicked Witch of the West was watching them. She had only one eye, but it was as powerful as a telescope, and she could see everything. So as she sat by the door of her castle, she happened to look around, and she saw Dorothy lying asleep with her friends beside her. The Wicked Witch was angry to find them in her country. She blew on a silver whistle that hung around her neck. In a few seconds, a pack of wolves came running toward her. They had long legs and fierce eyes and sharp teeth. "Go to those people," said the witch, "and tear them to pieces." "Aren't you going to make them into your slaves?" asked the leader of the wolves. "No," answered the Wicked Witch. "One is made of tin, one is made of straw, one is a little girl, and one is a lion. None of them is fit to work, so you may tear them to pieces." "Very well," said the wolf, and he dashed away at full speed with the rest of the pack. But the Scarecrow and the Tin Man were wide awake, and they heard the wolves coming. The Tin Man grabbed his axe, and as the leader of the wolves ran toward him, he swung his arm and chopped off the wolf's head. As soon as each wolf came close, he killed it with a sharp axe. Soon, 40 wolves lay dead in a great heap. When the Wicked Witch saw what the Tin Man had done, she became even angrier than before. So she blew her silver whistle twice. In a few minutes, a great flock of wild crows came flying towards her. The Wicked Witch said to the King Crow, "Fly at once to the strangers and peck out their eyes and tear them to pieces." The wild crows flew toward Dorothy and her friends. When she saw them coming, Dorothy was afraid, but the Scarecrow said, "This is my battle. Lie down beside me and you will be safe." So everyone but the Scarecrow lay down on the ground. The Scarecrow stood up and stretched out his arms. When the crows saw him, they were frightened and did not dare to come any closer. But the King Crow said, "It's only a stuffed man. I will peck his eyes out." The King Crow flew at the Scarecrow, who caught it by the head and twisted its neck until it was dead. As each crow flew at the Scarecrow, he twisted its neck. Soon there were 40 crows lying dead beside him. When the Wicked Witch saw all of her crows lying in a heap, she went into a terrible rage and blew her silver whistle 3 times. This time, a great swarm of bees came flying to her. The Wicked Witch told the bees to sting Dorothy and her friends to death. But the Scarecrow saw the bees coming. He scattered his straw all over Dorothy, Toto, and the lion. This way the bees flew at the Tin Man, and their stingers broke off against the tin. The Tin Man was not hurt, but all the bees died. Their bodies lay scattered in the field. The Wicked Witch was so angry when she saw her bees lying in little heaps that she stamped her foot and tore her hair and gnashed her teeth. Then she called a dozen of her slaves, who were the Winkies, and gave them sharp spears. She told them to find the strangers and destroy them. The Winkies were not brave people, but they had to obey the Wicked Witch, so they marched away. When the lion saw them coming, he gave a great roar. The poor Winkies were so frightened that they ran away as fast as they could. When the Wicked Witch saw what had happened, she made up her mind how to act. She went to the cupboard and took out her golden cap. The cap had a special charm. Whoever owned it could call 3 times upon the winged monkeys. These creatures would obey any order they were given, but no one could command the winged monkeys more than 3 times. The Wicked Witch had used the charm of the cap twice before, so this was her last wish. She put the golden cap on her head and stood on her left foot. Then she recited a secret charm. Soon the sky darkened and a low rumbling sound could be heard. In a few minutes, the witch was surrounded by a crowd of monkeys with huge and powerful wings on their shoulders. The Wicked Witch ordered the winged monkeys to destroy the strangers, except for the lion. She wanted him brought to her so she could make him her slave. "Your command shall be obeyed," said the leader. Then the winged monkeys flew away. When they found the Tin Man, the monkeys grabbed him and carried him through the air. When they were over some sharp pointed rocks, they dropped the poor Tin Man. He fell a great distance to the rocks, where he lay so battered and dented that he couldn't move. The rest of the monkeys caught the Scarecrow, and with their long fingers pulled all of the straw out of his clothes and his head. They made his hat, boots, and clothes into a small bundle and threw it into the top branches of a tall tree. After they had done this, the monkeys threw pieces of rope around the lion and wound many coils around his body, head, and legs. When they were sure he was unable to bite or scratch, they lifted him up and flew him away with him to the witch's castle. At the castle, he was placed in a small yard with a high iron fence so that he could not escape. But Dorothy was not harmed at all. She stood with Toto in her arms and watched what the monkeys did to her friends. The leader of the winged monkeys flew up to her. His long, hairy arms stretched out, and his ugly face grinned terribly. But when he saw the mark of the good witch's kiss on her forehead, he stopped short, and he motioned the others not to touch her. "We dare not harm this little girl," he said to them, "for she is protected by the power of good, and that is greater than the power of evil. All we can do is carry her to the castle of the Wicked Witch and leave her there." So they carefully lifted Dorothy in their arms and carried her to the castle. The Wicked Witch was surprised and worried when she saw the mark on Dorothy's forehead. She knew that she could not hurt the girl in any way. When she saw Dorothy's silver slippers, she began to tremble in fear, for she knew what a powerful charm belonged to them. But the Wicked Witch was also very clever. She knew that Dorothy did not know the true power of the silver slippers. So the Wicked Witch laughed to herself and thought, "I can still make her for my slave, for she does not know how to use her power." Then she said to Dorothy, "Come with me and see that you mind everything I tell you, for if you do not, I will make an end of you as I did the Tin Man and the Scarecrow." The witch led Dorothy through the castle until they came to the kitchen. Here the witch made Dorothy clean the pots and pans, sweep the floor, and feed the fire with heavy logs. While Dorothy was hard at work, the witch would go into the courtyard and harness the lion like a horse. She wanted the lion to pull her cart and take her wherever she wished to go. But as she opened the gate, the lion gave a loud roar and bounded at her so fiercely that the witch was afraid and ran out and shut the gate. If I cannot harness you, said the witch, I can starve you. You shall have nothing to eat until you do as I wish. So after that, she took no food to the imprisoned lion. Every day she came to the gate at noon and asked, Are you ready to be harnessed like a horse? And the lion would answer, No, if you come in this yard, I will bite you. The reason the lion did not have to do as the witch wished was that every night, while the witch was asleep, Dorothy carried him food from the cupboard. After he ate, Dorothy would sit beside him and they would talk of their troubles and try to plan some way to escape. But they could not find a way to get out of the castle, for it was always guarded by the yellow Winkies, who were the slaves of the Wicked Witch and too afraid of her not to do as she ordered. Dorothy worked very hard during the day, and her life became very sad. She knew it would be difficult to return to Kansas. Sometimes she held little Toto in her arms and cried bitterly. Now the Wicked Witch had a great longing to own Dorothy's silver shoes. She knew the power of those shoes would make her more evil and feared than she already was. She watched Dorothy carefully to see if she ever took off her shoes, thinking she might steal them. But Dorothy only removed them when she took her bath at night. The witch was too afraid of the dark to dare enter Dorothy's room at night to take the shoes, and her fear of water was even greater than her fear of the dark, so she never came near when Dorothy took her bath. The old witch never touched water and never let water touch her in any way. But the Wicked Witch was very clever, and she finally thought of a trick so that she could get Dorothy's silver shoes. She placed an iron bar in the middle of the kitchen floor. Then she used her magic to make the bar invisible. In this way, she knew Dorothy would trip over the bar and lose her shoes. But when Dorothy tripped over the invisible bar, she only lost one shoe. The witch quickly snatched it and put it on her own foot. When Dorothy saw what had happened, she grew very angry and said, Give me back my shoe. I will not, laughed the witch. Now it is my shoe, not yours, and someday I shall get the other one from you too. This made Dorothy so angry that she picked up the bucket of water she'd been using to wash the floor and threw it over the witch. Instantly, the witch gave a loud scream, and then, as Dorothy looked in wonder, the witch began to shrink and melt away. See what you have done, she screamed. In a minute I shall melt away. I'm very sorry, said Dorothy, who was truly frightened to see the witch melting away like brown sugar. In a few minutes, the witch turned into a brown, melted, shapeless mass and began to spread all over the kitchen floor. All that was left of the witch was the silver shoe. Dorothy picked it up, cleaned it, and put it back on her own foot. Then, being free at last, Dorothy ran out to the courtyard to tell the lion that the Wicked Witch of the West had come to an end and that they were no longer prisoners in a strange land. Chapter 11, The Rescue. The lion was very happy to hear that the Wicked Witch had been melted away, and Dorothy unlocked the gate of his prison and set him free. Next, Dorothy gathered all of the Winkies together and told them that they were no longer slaves. The Winkies were happy, for they had been made to work hard for many years. They made the day of their freedom a holiday and spent the time feasting and dancing. If only our friends the Scarecrow and the Tin Man were with us, said the lion, I would be totally happy. Don't you think there's some way we could rescue them? Said Dorothy. We can try, answered the lion. So they called the Winkies and asked them to help rescue their friends. The Winkies said they would be delighted to do something for Dorothy, since she had set them all free. So a group of the Winkies traveled that day and part of the next until they came to the rocky plain where the Tin Man lay. All battered and bent, his axe was next to him, but the blade was rusted and the handle broken off. The Winkies lifted him and carried him back to the castle. When they reached the castle, Dorothy asked the Winkies if any of their people were tinsmiths. She found that there were several Winkies who were skilled tinsmiths. In a little while, they came to the castle with baskets of tools. They looked the Tin Man over carefully and told Dorothy that they thought they could mend him so he would be as good as ever. The Winkies worked for 3 days and 3 nights, They hammered, twisted, and pounded at the legs, body, and head of the Tin Man. At last he was straightened out into his old form, and his joints worked as well as ever. When at last he walked into Dorothy's room and thanked her for rescuing him, he was so happy that he cried tears of joy. Dorothy and the Lion were so happy to see their friend that they all danced and celebrated all day. "If only we had the Scarecrow with us again," said the Tin Man, "I would be truly happy." "We must try to find him," said Dorothy. So she called the Winkies to help her, and they walked all that day and part of the next until they came to the tall tree where the winged monkeys had tossed the Scarecrow's clothes. The Tin Man quickly chopped the tree down, and Dorothy and the Winkies carried the Scarecrow's clothes back to the castle. As soon as they entered the castle, the Winkies began stuffing the clothes with nice, clean straw. Soon the Scarecrow stood before them, as good as ever. He thanked them over and over again for saving him. Now they were reunited. Dorothy and her friends spent a few happy days at the castle, where they found everything they needed to make themselves comfortable. But after a few days, they all decided that it was time to return to Oz and ask for the things that they had been promised. So they sadly said goodbye to the Winkies and packed food and blankets for the journey back to the Emerald City. Chapter 12, The Winged Monkeys. The next day, Dorothy and her friends began their journey to the Emerald City. They walked a long way and still could not see a sign of the Emerald City. And since they had been carried to the castle by the winged monkeys, they were not at all sure in which direction they should walk. Days passed and they still saw nothing but the fields and the forest. The Scarecrow began to complain. "We have surely lost our way," he said, "and unless we find it again in time to reach the Emerald City, I shall never get my brains." "Nor I my heart," said the Tin Man, "and I do not have the courage to keep tramping forever without getting anywhere at all," said the Lion. Dorothy sat down in the grass to think. "Suppose we call the field mice," she suggested. "They could probably tell us the way to the Emerald City." "To be sure they could," cried the Scarecrow. "Why didn't we think of that before?" Dorothy blew the whistle that the Queen of the Field Mice had given her. In a few minutes they heard the pattering of tiny feet, and many of the small gray mice came running up to her. The Queen herself came up to Dorothy. "What can I do for my friends?" she squeaked. "We've lost our way," answered Dorothy. "Can you tell us where the Emerald City is?" "Certainly," answered the Queen, "but it is a great way off for you to have had it at your backs all the time." Then she noticed Dorothy's golden cap and suggested that Dorothy use the golden cap to call the winged monkeys, who could carry everyone to the Emerald City. So Dorothy recited the magic words that were written inside the golden cap. In a few minutes she heard the chattering and flapping of wings as the band of winged monkeys flew up to her. The king bowed low before Dorothy and asked, "What is your command?" Dorothy explained that they had lost their way and wished to be taken to the Emerald City. No sooner had she spoken than the monkeys picked up Dorothy, Toto, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Lion and carried them in their long, hairy arms all the way to the Emerald City. The journey took a very short time. When they reached the gates of the Emerald City, the monkeys set them all down carefully. Then the king bowed to Dorothy and flew swiftly away, followed by all his band. "That was a nice ride," said Dorothy. "Yes, and a quick way out of our troubles," answered the Lion. "It certainly was lucky that you remembered to bring that golden cap."